parents must face as their children come into the teen years or in the teen years?
Wow, I think the peer pressure today and the influences of media is just enormous, I think, on teens at this point. Very different from when we were young.
The other thing for parents is that it calls for a very different set of skills. That the skills that are helpful with younger children have to change a lot when kids become teenagers. You need to give them more room, let them make more choices, and I think it's a real difficult balancing act between how much is too much and how much is not enough.
Well, go ahead.
That negotiation, I think, is so critical because, you know, if you hold on too tight, you're going to lose them. It's like toothpaste. You know, if you squeeze the tube too much, you're going to lose a lot. But on the other hand, if they don't know the boundaries, then you're in trouble as well. So that's a real delicate line of negotiating with teenagers. What's too much and what's too little in terms of space and what they can do.
Well, let's talk about that because I really do think that's a part of the issue for most parents who maybe enjoyed their children when they were children and now they're coming into their teen years and maybe holding their breath because you've heard that teenagers turn into creatures from outer space or whatever. What kind of...
I remember my little brother said one time when we were growing up, we were watching a TV show, and he turned to me and he said, "Glenna, whatever you do, don't grow up to be a teenager."
So what does that mean, growing up to be a teenager? What kinds of skills do parents need? And really, what is happening, I guess, both emotionally and physiologically for the children?
Wow. I think that today, what parents need to know is that there are lots of myths that kids have about turning this magical 13. You know, at 12, the night before 13, they have this wonderful child who wants to be with them, who's compliant, and the whole 9 yards. The day that child turns 13, there's an expectation somehow, I'm finding, that they have to change and be different.
Yes.
And so at 13, they're flexing their muscles more in terms of what I can do and making my own choices and whatever. And I think what parents have to do is be aware of that transition at 12 with kids, and before, but at 12, be aware of that transition and talk about, before they get to be a teenager, what does that mean to you? What do you think that means? And how are we going to work that out and negotiate it so you can be that teenager?
So if the parent has some sense of what the child is expecting, you're saying that the parent can help the child through
Absolutely.
that transition.
And vice versa.
And the parent through the
Vice
transition.
versa. Yeah.
Open the dialogue.
Open it.
And if you've had good dialogue with your children before, it's sure a bonus as they grow up. Also, it's confusing sometimes for us because even when they turn 13, they'll flip back to 11 or 12. They'll come occasionally want to sit in your lap, but they want to go when they want to go. So it's like you can't say, okay, now you're 13, you're grown up, because they're still recycling some of their childhood stuff.
Right, and I think what they tell you is sometimes, yeah, I want to still sit on your lap, I still want to hug, I still want to, you know, cuddle. But on the other hand, there are times when I want to be out past 10 o'clock. I don't see why I have to be home at 10 o'clock because Sally's mother or Johnny's mother doesn't expect them home at 10.
That's a good one. I'm the only child that has to be in at 10 o'clock.
That is deprived.
Talk about setting curfews. You know, you have bedtimes and curfews when they're 9, 10. I mean, I'm finding that I could get my child in bed reasonably well just by having the time set. Now it's like, go to bed, go to bed, go to bed. And I sound like a broken record, which I hate sounding like. So how do you set curfews for teenagers? And I mean, not just younger teenagers, older teenagers as well. I mean, it would change, I'm sure.
I think it does change. And I don't know that my experience is typical, but we moved right after my daughters became teenagers. and we were in a fairly small town in Northeast Texas, what I did was call a bunch of other parents and say, what is your curfew? When do you expect to try to get some sense of what the community was doing, because I know in my family, my parents were very, very effective with little kids and not effective at all with teenagers. They didn't know how to let go. So I made up that if I did it the opposite, it would be better. So I often wouldn't set even the minimum rules that I needed to, and that doesn't work any better.
No.
180 degrees from sick is sick.
Right.
So I called around and asked for some consensus in what parents were doing in that community.
And I think that's why the dialogue is so important up front, because I think what you have is a track record of what's working and what's not. A youngster who can't get up in the morning, you can say to them, if you can't get up and your curfew is this, what is it going to take for you to have a later curfew, but also get up at the same time? Getting up is not negotiable in the time. And so within the parameters of, let's say, 9:30 and 10:30, what is it that we can negotiate? But if you say to the kid, let's negotiate it all, they say 1 o'clock, and you say, you must be out of your mind. And they say, but you said, let's negotiate.
Yeah.
So I think you have to set some parameters. It's the dialogue going into that you know what's reasonable curfew. Because if you don't, then what you do is you're going to set up a second set of behaviors that is destructive, acting out. I mean, we have a world of teenagers now out on the street at night, which I just continue to go, oh, but they're sneaking out of windows and they're doing all kinds of things that's very destructive.
And that's scary.
That's
To
scary.
think that
Very
that is
scary.
in fact happening. Because that gets at another issue for me, the issue of values and how a child forms his or her own belief system, what she or he is going to now hold dear. I read somewhere, and I can't tell you where I read it, that teenagers are by nature atheists, and that it's when they are struggling most with their faith. They may have been faithful Sunday school goers or faithful synagogue goers or whatever, and they may be bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, or they may be confirmed or whatever, and then they are atheists.
Yes.
Okay, so for parents who are also trying to help their children transition faith-wise, how do we help in that area? Is that a fair question? I don't even know.
I think it's the same. I think it's the same. Let's have some negotiation. There are some families that they're at church from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night on Sunday. A teenager, by virtue of their wanting to have some independence and leeway, may say, well, I want to go to church, but I don't want to go to night service, or I don't want to go to something else. Okay, let's negotiate. I really need you to go to this, but I'm willing for you. I think the values have to stay. Don't throw out the values, but how can we negotiate so you have some input into those values? I don't know.
And to be clear about your own values, and that kids have a right to figure out what theirs are. I think what happens with a lot of parents that I've seen is that kids do go through this period of coming home and saying, I don't know if I really believe in God or not. Well, the response to that is real key. If you can enter a dialogue and say, well, what makes you think that perhaps you don't? What is your thinking about that? What have you heard? And be very clear that your values are consistent.
That's right.
That I believe what I believe, and you have the right, with my respect, to decide what you believe.
Right.
But what a lot of parents do is, what do you mean you don't believe in God? Oh, you're going to hell.
Well, and I think probably because the parent themselves, this is me theologizing now, but probably because the parent themselves are threatened. Their own faith is threatened by someone who doesn't believe. But the flip side of that is, what about parents who have not had a faith system? Maybe, they had a value system in place, but not a faith system. And as their children became teenagers, began to worship somewhere. Now they themselves are transitioning into a faith system. How do they deal with teenagers? I've seen this happen. So I mean, you
Yeah.
know, where parents are changing and
You know, I think that one of the things is allowing that flexibility that you have taught me to value my spirituality. You've taught me to value religion. Let me have a choice. And I may want to go to something different than what you're going to, but I'm going. And I think, you know, I think when we were children, I mean, born a Baptist, died a
Died a
Baptist,
Baptist,
you
yeah.
know. But we're no longer that. We're a very mobile society in so many ways. The point is that you hold on to that spirituality and helping the kids do that
In some way. I mean,
in some way.
that you make it clear that spirituality is an important value in your life.
basically what I
Doctrinaire is not as important as that you develop the spiritual side of yourself.
So basically what I've heard you both say is that as parents we have to keep talking to our children
Absolutely.
while we maintain our stance. I think
And keep listening.
and keep listening.
Right.
Thank you for adding and keep listening. I think Prescott Williams once said to me that a parent who hasn't given their child something worth rebelling against isn't worth her weight in salt. So basically you're talking about giving your children a construct, your teenagers a construct. Well, I think we're going to take a break. When we come back, I really want to talk about sexuality. We want to talk more about how you deal with it when your children become become truly sexual creatures. Back in a moment.
Serving Austin means serving you. That has always been the primary goal of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. We are religion in action through the work of these organizations. Each plays a key role in making the capital city a better place to live, but we can't do it alone. Do you have some spare time, talents, or any resources that you can share? If you do, please call AMM at 472-7627 because serving Austin means serving you.
Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue. Today's topic is parenting teens, and our guests are counselors Janesta Stirrup and Glenda Chappell. Janesta, I'm going to start with you because you said that's a tough one. We said when we came back, we started talking about sexuality, both how do we talk to our children about it, and the fact that children are becoming way more aware at the teenage years of their sexuality.
It's tough. I mean, it really is. Again, I referenced when we were growing up, your parents say don't do it, and 99% of the time you didn't, you know. Now parents say don't do it, and for our teens today, for whatever reasons, they're saying, but you're not going to tell me what to do. It's my body. Again, I'm going to go back to, and it sounds so simple, that dialogue, helping your kids understand what is it you want in relationships, what is it you're trying to get out of being or wanting to be sexual. Help them appreciate themselves and their bodies is so critical. Doing that keeps them from having to use their body to make friends, to have warmth, to have love or nurturance or whatever superficial gain they're trying to get. Again, it's that relationship, I think, that parents have with their children that either will push it or at least help teens look at it I need to be healthy about my body and my sexuality.
I think,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah, I think one of the issues, I hear what you're saying, but I think one of the issues is that a lot of parents are very frightened for our children right now. I mean, stats tell us that teens are, by the time they're 18, 75% of all teenagers will have had at least one sexual encounter. And we're thinking AIDS is out there, and you know, I mean, as parents, we're thinking like that.
And it is increasing in
And it's increasing in teenagers. So, I mean, I hear you saying talk to your children, and I think I do that, but I'm still thinking to myself, well, what is he going to do when it's hot and heavy? You know what
Well,
I'm
you know,
saying?
once there was a commercial about the father wanted to talk to the son about sexuality, and he comes in the room, he's talking about son, and the son is going, you know. But I think even though the son is doing this, I think there's a listening there if the relationship is there.
So you're talking about the prior relationship of the parent to the child.
With the child. I
Yeah.
think that's key.
Right, because you can't start at 13 or 15
Oh,
talking about
forget
sex
it.
with your children.
And they won't wait that long.
And they won't wait that long. Well, they won't, they may not talk about it with you, but they,
Yeah.
did you want to say more about that, Glenda, the sexuality part?
I think it's often very difficult for us because I know my parents were extremely uncomfortable with the subject, and I got almost no information. And so when my daughters became teenagers, I wanted to be open about it. I wanted us to have a relaxed discussion, but I know I was putting out some real discomfort about it, and I just tried to be accountable for that and say, I know you're going to pick up that I'm real tense and nervous about this, and it's hard for me to discuss it with you, but I want to, and I'm trying. So if you feel that double message, I'm saying it's okay to talk about, but it doesn't really feel like it, this is why. I don't have any background in this.
How much do you think peer pressure plays in early teen sexual activity? I mean, sexuality is just who you are and how you become, you know, who you're going to be. But the being sexually active, how much do you think pressure from peers play in?
Oh, I think a tremendous amount. I think a tremendous amount. The kid who at 15 can say, I'm still a virgin, feels, whether it's male or female, feels that I'm some kind of nerd or geek or whatever. But again, I think kids can handle being a nerd or geek or whatever and hold on to that if they have a relationship. I'm going to come back to the parents. If they've got the kind of relationship with their parents that they can talk about the pressure that they're experiencing. Yes, with their friends, there's somebody in the group who's going to have tried it and now wants to talk or encourage everybody else in. But again, if you go back to those values, if those values are there, that kid is going to say, I don't want to do that. If they understand what it is they want out of trying or being sexual, if they understand what it is they want, they're going to think about it first.
Right.
And they may say, I really, really, really want to.
Right.
And
then what do you
choose
do
not
as
to.
a
And then I'm
parent?
going to pass out as a parent.
Oh,
Well, I mean, that is a part
But,
of
yeah.
it. That teenagers are getting this massive dose of hormones.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are sexual
They are.
creatures. And, you know, God fashioned us that way. That's how our bodies are made. We're created to be sexual, or we wouldn't exist.
right.
So I think to be able to validate, yes, you have those feelings, and those are positive feelings. That's part of being a man or a woman. That's a wonderful part of your life, and there's a lot to look forward to. And these are our values about it, and this is why.
Right.
So that you keep the dialogue going, but you also try your best to affirm that part of the teenager and not to shame them.
Right, you don't make them
having
feel
powerful
strange
feelings.
for having powerful
Exactly,
sexual
because it's
feelings.
natural, it's normal. That's what
It's
we're
on
all about.
TV.
It's on
It's
TV.
It's on
The
TV.
It's
other
on
thing.
7 o'clock TV. It's not even, it's not even
Right.
just cable. My
Yeah.
son and I were watching something, and just this scene came on, just out of the blue. And I went, and he said, we don't have to talk about it, Mom. I turned my head. For which I was grateful that I didn't have to talk about it at that point. But I have been talking to them about their sexuality. I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because we've been talking about the responsibility of parents as it relates to our children's sexuality. One of the things that I have done as a parent, and I guess I want y'all to validate this, is I have given my children other people to talk to. You know, if you can't talk to me about this, here's a man in the church or brother in the church, somebody you hang out with, who I trust has accurate information. Because one of the things that as a parent you're so concerned about is that your children are taking the words of 11-year-olds or 14-year-olds about how this machinery works, or what you're supposed to feel.
And that's really wise of you, because I think our kids have a real natural urge to protect us, and if they sense that we're frightened or uncomfortable, then they're going to shut up about it real fast to take care of their parents. So for them to have other adults, like one of my best women friends was very available to my daughters, because I did have some discomfort and some fear around it. And we talked about it a good bit, but they also could talk to my friend about it and feel comfortable with that, have other people. Information is very, very important. And we have a really wonderful, I think, candidate for Surgeon General now, and that she talks a lot about information, educating kids, making available protective methods for them, because one thing we're finding is that children are maturing a lot faster because of better nutrition, better medical care.
We can no longer go around saying they are not doing it.
Oh yeah.
No,
we
so we have to deal with it. I mean, so I mean, I agree with you.
You're right. Let's turn the tables just a little bit and talk about the growing independence of teenagers, allowances, getting a job, how you help your child decide, one, what's a fair allowance, that kind of thing, decide whether they can handle a job, looking toward getting out of your house, whatever. How do you do that?
Partly a fair allowance.
Shaking her head again. That's a tough question.
She's not asking easy ones, is she?
Well, this isn't
let's
an
go
easy
to the
thing.
core. I think, and I work with lots of kids, and we get into major battles about this. Having an allowance is a privilege.
Yes. I think so.
Most teenagers don't think that. They say that it's in the Bill of Rights, that when I was born, I came with an allowance.
I'm entitled.
And you cannot take that from me. I think the first thing is that parents need to be real clear about, with kids, what they're giving them money for, and things that you expect as a part of a household, people to participate in. The question I have for parents is, why are you giving them money to do what they are supposed to do? It's a double message.
Oh, you don't have any feelings about
man,
Glenda.
I think also we have to take into account the financial situation of the family, that I see parents doing without to give their children all these things that perhaps they didn't have, and I don't think that's a good model. Parents need to take good care of themselves to be available for their children.
Oh, the latest is, I heard one of the kids said that they had this very good friend who had a birthday, and they were going to give them, Dooneyburg, these purses.
I have no idea.
That's $200, $300.
Oh,
They were
right.
going to give it to their friend, and I passed out. Say no more. I mean, this is the
No,
kind of
that's
access to money that our kids have.
What about
and that's
cars?
a whole, oh, please.
What about cars? What about a teenager having a car at 16, 17?
Well, can they buy them?
Can they buy it?
Can they afford the insurance?
I think with all of this comes responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
with
what we
my
have
children, I mean, even I did not buy a Nintendo, and I did not buy a Sega Genesis. They bought a Nintendo and a Sega Genesis and the games that go with it. I said, if you can be ingenious enough to figure out how to get the money to get it, you can have it. I think I'll do that with a car, too.
I think you'd be wise.
Also, the thing about, just briefly on allowance, is that a lot of times it's very important for kids to learn to manage money, and it is better to have an allowance than, Mom, I want $5 for this, $10 for that. There's no limit.
Right.
And likewise with cars, that a child, I think, needs to at least furnish a good portion of the expense.
What about the job? What about helping a child know whether they can handle a job or not?
Well, I mean, a job can be anywhere. And I agree that if you're going to give them some money, it's for work beyond the natural
Make up
expectation,
your
okay?
room.
So I think kids having a job or cutting lawns or whatever they're doing or throwing newspapers, I think teaches them responsibility. And that's the key. They've got to, if they can't be responsible, they can't have a car. And they, I mean, you know.
I do think jobs are very helpful for many, many, many adolescents, but their main job is school. And that's the bottom line for me, is that if they're handling school okay and they can handle a part-time job, great. But if school starts to suffer, that's their job.
Yeah.
And that's the
I
priority.
agree with that. I agree with that.
Well, I agree with that too. I guess it's unanimous.
Great
Don't get a
minds.
job unless you can handle making A's and B's in school.
There you go. That's right.
All right.
And no car.
And no car.
All out.
For Janessa. Janessa and Glenna, you know we run out of time way too soon.
Always.
All the time. I'd really like to thank you both for being here with us today. It's been informative and it's been fun. You both are insightful, and having parented and worked with teenagers is helpful to us. On behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, I'm Valerie Bridgman Davis, thanking you for joining us today and inviting you to be with us next week at the same time on Austin Faith Dialogue. Peace.
For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.